Hello, everyone, and welcome to the RV Connects podcast, where we bring part-time RV adventures to life. Whether you're a weekend warrior or just dreaming of your next escape, we're here to inspire, inform, and entertain. This week, Dan and I are trading snowy highways for sunny Florida skies as we dive into Disney's Fort Wilderness Resort at Walt Disney World Resort. From world-class amenities to rustic charm, we'll explore whether this iconic RV destination lives up to the hype, the premium price tag, and the long drive from Canada. Plus, do you really need to be a Disney superfan to enjoy the magic? Stick around as we break it all down for you.
Hi everybody, my name's Dan. We're going to talk about Walt Disney World Fort Wilderness Campground today, and we really do think this is one of the places you should hit the road and go see.
So Fort Wilderness is 750 acres of pine and cypress forests. It offers nearly 800 campsites and over 400 cabins, which we'll talk about a little bit later. So there's sort of 5 classes of campsite in Fort Wilderness. It is very wildernessy, I guess. Like, it's less of a asphalt parking lot style pull through KOA type RV park. So you do get that feeling of, the trees and being very private and in the wilderness, which is great. But there's sort of 5 classes of campsite that are within the campground. So you've got like tent / pop-up sites, which are, fairly small, have a good pad to put a tent. You have full hookup sites, you have preferred, you have premium, and you have Meadows premium. So we'll give a brief overview of the different classes and a couple of notes on, I guess, maneuverability, we would call it, because there are some loops, I would say, and Dan would certainly say, that are a little bit tighter depending on the size of your rig. Tent and pop-up sites, those are loops 1,500 and 2,000. They're about 10 by 25 feet total. So they have kind of a dirt, sort of like sandy area to set up your tent. The rest of the sites are either, gravel or asphalt. So they have power, water, cable, internet, no sewer. Those prices used to be like amazing, but people kind of started to misuse those. And I think Disney is really good at picking up on when people are using their price setup to their own advantage. And so prices have actually raised on those sites, because people would book these really, really cheap sites and just so that they could get early access to what we used to call Fast Pass, which is now Lightning Lane reservations, where if you stay on site, you get to kind of pre-book some rides in advance. And people wouldn't even show up and stay in the campsite. They would just pay whatever the campsite was and kind of take advantage of that. And Disney kind of picked up on that. So they did raise the prices for that. So I did a bunch of pricing when we're talking about staying at all of these sites, and it's just based on 2 adults and 2 kids above the age of 10, because that's when Disney kind of considers you an adult for the pricing structure. So I just kind of wanted to give the basis. If you have kids younger than that, and it would be a little bit different pricing for tickets and parks and whatnot. But the tent and pop-up sites are $89 depending on when you're staying, but they do have stay more deals. They have Canadian discount deals throughout the year, and you can usually get them for around $73 a night, which is still pretty reasonable. So full hookup sites next. So those are loops 1,600 to 1,900. Those are double the length of the tent and pop-up sites. They're 10 by 50 feet, and you get cable, water, sewer, and power. So these sites are actually the furthest from the marina and the Meadows. They're quiet. They're about 20% cheaper than the preferred sites, and you can get 1 RV and 1 tent, whether that's a tent for people to sleep in or a dining tent on the pad. And they run about $120 a night.
And I would say those are a really good option if you're hardcore going to the park. If you're going when the park opens till the park closes and you're watching the last firework from Main Street Disney, that's a good choice because you're not in your site too much of the day.
Right. And I mean, even if you are, I think there's, it's quiet enough that you kind of get that camping experience.
Oh, and you do. And you've got lots of tree cover, and it's a nice place to relax, and you've got your own kind of belongings and your familiarities with you.
Yeah. So we stayed in full hookups last time we were there, and we'll talk about kind of the challenges of maneuvering the trailer within that loop a little bit later. But I just kind of want to finish the overview of the site so we kind of have an idea of what we're working with here. So the next step on the list is preferred campsites. So those are the third most expensive. Those are loops 100, 200, and 300, and they are close to both the marina, which is where you can take the boats to a couple other Disney resorts, and Magic Kingdom. And they are close to Pioneer Hall, which is kind of the main dining building, and Trails End Restaurant. the trading post, and the beach, which is also obviously down at the marina. So it's going to give you really, really easy access to getting to all like the major amenities in the parks. Those are about 45 feet long and 10 feet wide, so about the same as the full hookup sites. And you are allowed one RV and one tent. The pads are a little bit narrower. I think this kind of preferred campsite is kind of like that like squishy middle between like your super premium and the full hookups. Those run about $129 US a night, so only $9 more than the full hookup sites. So finally, the last two are the premium campsites and the Meadows premium site. So they're larger, they're designed for big rigs. They have concrete pads, which are like 18 by 60 feet. Again, you have all of the power, water, sewer, cable, internet, get upgraded picnic tables, and you actually get grills on the sites with the premium campsites. So premium are loops 1,300 and 1,000. Those are $140 US a night. And then we have the Meadows premium sites. So those are loops 600, 800, 900, 1,400. And so those just got constructed or kind of debuted in 2020. Were repurposed, I guess is the right phrase. So they offer close proximity to Meadows, campfire show, trading posts. So they're just kind of like spattered about. And those are like what you would call the location sites. So like maybe if you were in Fort Wilderness and you like were not renting a golf cart, that would be a good splurge to stay in the sites where you can actually walk to get places. There is an internal bus that runs around the campground, but the campground is huge. But if budgeting for like a golf cart rental isn't in your budget, or you just have like pedal bikes, then that's probably a great location-based place you can stay. Do we want to talk about check-in?
So check-in, like I think the way I like to describe this to people is to visualize you're pulling off the road, you know, the main highway that brings you to the campground. You're going to drive down a nice paved wide road. You're going to come to a series of booths that are, you know, kind of got a Disney theme to them. You're going to feel like you're driving into the front gates of the fort. You're going to pull up, you're going to put your window down, and, you know, guest services is going to come out, and you're already going to have a reservation. They're going to, you know, confirm your reservation, what you have. You're going to turn your engine off. You're going to get, this is the part that I'm trying to impart with everybody, you're going to get all the information that you need when you speak to this person. You're not getting out to go in to register. Nobody's waiting in the car with the kids while one person goes in and gets half the story. Everybody gets the whole story at the front gate. And then you're going to know, when you leave that place, you're going to know where your campsite is. And then you're going to, you know, continue on. You're going to, if you have a toad behind you, like a car on the back of your Class A or your Class C, there's a little area where you can pull off and disconnect that before you get to your campsite. But when you leave this place, you're headed to your campsite to go set up. Mm-hmm. Really super like customer centric, very easy, very friendly. They'll answer every single question. You're not rushed. And for the times that we've been there, we haven't had a lineup ever. We just pulled right up and got right out.
Yeah. I would also mention too, when you're actually booking these sites, there's always like Disney allows you to make like, you know, requests when you make a booking. You can request like, you know, after you book a site, you can request a specific loop. You may or may not get it. There's no guarantee. I think often booking just like kind of the class of site you want, like we're going to book premium, we're going to book, you know, full hookup, whatever it is that you book, and leave it up to fate, because I think that can actually help you out, because if there's no availability, you can get an upgrade if you know, request a specific loop or whatever, and like it just kind of ties you in. It gives a little more freedom at the gate, and we've certainly experienced that the first time we went there.
Yeah, the first time we went there was in the summer. We pulled in with the girls. We had a reservation. We were expecting to get, you know, kind of the full hookup preferred level campsite. The guy flipped out a map, said, this is your reservation. We have lots of availability. Just point on the map where you want to be. And so visualizing the map, and you're having this conversation with them, you now know where the pool is. You know where the trading post is. You know where the bus stops are. And then we picked a better campsite with a, you know, higher level of service right near all of those amenities that were important to us. And it didn't cost us extra money. We paid for what our original booking was.
Yeah. So disclaimer, that doesn't happen often. It doesn't happen a lot. It's what we call pixie dusting if you're familiar with Disney. But certainly just because we left our options open, you know, we were able to have this conversation. He was like, you know what? Yeah, we're not so busy here.
And if you're pulling in on peak season, if it's like a long weekend, it's probably not going to happen. But our experience is that they didn't shoehorn us into a site just because.
Yeah. real quick before we get into some of like this experiences in the park, I want to talk a bit about the amenities, because the amenities are, pretty in-depth. Some of them are free, some of them are paid, and we'll talk about that also. But again, you've got several classes of accommodation. You've even got, cabin options if that's something that you're looking into, both regular cabin rentals and kind of the DVC program cabin rentals. You've got swimming pools, you've got fishing, you've got horseback riding, you can go canoeing and kayaking, you have the Hoop-de-Doo musical review, which is sort of a premium dining experience, all you can eat musical cabaret buffet. I think, in the last 11 years since we've been going to Disney, it was probably one of the highlights for both the kids and ourselves. I highly recommend everybody do it once if you can budget it. It's a premium package. I don't remember how much it is now, but it was fantastic for an evening out. And there's nightly campfire sing-alongs with Chip and Dale. Got the Trails End restaurant and quick service, which is just kind of hearty fare, like think cornbread and beans and like great, like just down home cooking if you don't feel like cooking at your site. There's a bunch of quick service options throughout the site. You've got pools, you've got basketball courts, like you can ride your bike. It's like there's everything that you would expect in like, a KOA holiday, like full service, playgrounds, all of that kind of stuff is available there. So if going to the parks and like isn't either not in your budget or not in your interest level, there's so many things you can do even within the campground without leaving the campground to kind of satisfy that need for a lot of activity. And we'll talk about some other free things that you can do like outside of the campground but within Disney property that you might want to look at if you're not too keen on kind of like a bunch of park days. I want to talk a little bit about some policy changes as it relates to, just new policies as it relates to having guests in the campground and golf cart rentals. And golf cart rentals, you're going to hear us mention a couple of times because I think they're an important topic that we do want to talk about. But in June of this year, actually, Fort Wilderness implemented new policies about guests bringing their own golf carts. So they have to present proof of insurance with minimum liability limits. So I think they're either $100,000 or $300,000, and they have to sign an agreement and a waiver. I think this is just a case of like, legal kills everything, right? Like, I think this is probably a case where perhaps they had an incident where somebody brought their own golf cart and now we have this policy. And so if you're bringing your own golf cart, a lot of people are super unhappy about that rule. They don't want to have to provide proof of insurance for their golf cart. The other option is to rent their golf carts on site. But I think a lot of people are kind of viewing this as a cash grab. So I don't know, you let us know, comment, send us a message and let us know what you think. But the other change that's really important is that Disney doesn't allow third-party rentals of golf carts anymore. So you used to be able to rent a golf cart for perhaps a little bit of a cheaper price than Disney would offer. They were allowed to drop it off at the campground, and then that service would pick it up when you leave, and that is no longer allowed.
So I'll just say from our most recent trip this summer, we do not own a golf cart. We don't go in any campground with a golf cart. We've gotten a golf cart both times at Disney, and it's been really easy to get the Disney golf cart. It's clean, it works, the check-in is really friendly, easier than getting a car at the airport when you rent a car.
The speed is governed, so you can't go too fast.
Your kids can't go too fast.
Well, your kids have to show their ID if they're going to drive, so that's also an important point too. They will crack down on that. No kiddos driving the golf carts in Disney. I think if you look very recently at, say, Google reviews for Disney's Fort Wilderness Resort, you're going to see a lot more like 1 and 2 stars than you ever have before. I don't think that speaks to the amenities of the park or like the quality of the park. It's more speaking to the fact that like if you actually read the comments, people are pretty PO'd about this change and people don't like change in general. So I think that's kind of reflective of like why we're seeing this new drop in ratings.
But I'd also counter that, and I would say, first of all, when you get there, like you will note that we haven't talked about water hookups or sewer or electrical, anything like that, because there's never a problem. It's not even worth talking about because it's tip top when all of those kind of logistical services are going on. But me going to the park, it's nice to know that the people that are in the campground are the people that are supposed to be in the campground, and it hasn't turned into a huge party park of people piggybacking their friends in. So yeah. I do appreciate that.
Yeah.
Will Disney probably pivot and find a way to be better about it? For sure. And that's what Disney does. They pivot all the time to make the experience better. So there's pros and cons to this whole policy change.
Yeah, for sure. So before we actually talk about other free stuff to do on property, I think, do we want to talk about maneuvering RVs? Because I think that's probably a good one. Like it is big rig friendly, don't get me wrong. But I think because of propensity of Disney visitors to like have a lot of like, there's a culture for regulars to have a lot of like inflatable Disney characters on the ends of their site, like right at the curb stop. And like it kind of narrows the roadway a little bit in some loops. So we'll give the example of so we just stayed in the full hookup site this summer because it was sort of a last minute booking. And I mean, I'll let you kind of take away the challenges that we had there.
Yeah, so maybe the roadways do feel a little bit narrower. Now, I will qualify everything to say when we book a site, we book an appropriate size site for our trailer. We don't, we have a 29-foot trailer, a F-150 with a crew cab and a 6.5-foot box. And when we punch it in, we don't underestimate what we're bringing. So we get an appropriate size site. The roads can feel a little bit narrower when you're going down because people put decorations right out to the edge. And, if you're just passing past the site, you're going to go slow and it's not going to be a problem. When we pulled in this time, we did have to ask the person across the road from us to move their truck. And it was specifically because if you've ever backed in a trailer, you know that the front of the vehicle swings out. And so your ground guide is always worried about the back end, and nobody ever thinks about the driver and the front end. And, is there a garbage can in the way, a post, whatever. In this particular case, a person had a vehicle right at the very front of their campsite. And so I had to get out and go and knock on their trailer door and ask them to kind of move their vehicle just for a little bit of extra caution. Could I have probably gotten in if they had not answered the door? Probably. It would have been a little bit longer. It would have probably been a little bit more frustrating, but I think we probably would have gotten in. So when you look at a lot of reviews and people say that it's tight, yeah, it's a little bit tight, but we've also been to lots of other parks where it's a little bit tight too. And everybody listening to this podcast doesn't stop going to those parks either. Mm-hmm. So that's just part of the RV lifestyle, but you'll get into your site. And Disney's got great customer service. So I have no doubt that if you absolutely could not get in, they would remedy the situation.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a good point. I think, in this case, it was kind of like that double folded. Like I think the guy was having a nap when you knocked on his door.
He was fast asleep.
So there's that. And because like the inflatables, like multiple cars on sites, like all of these things, like these are artificial barriers, right? So you will book a site and you say, okay, it's fine. It's 10 by 50 feet. There's obviously a lot of turning radius on the road, but when people put up these artificial barriers, it can create a challenge, which may be there. It may not be there. Right. And I think in this particular case too, when we rolled up, like the campground next to us, they were having a great time. They were playing cornhole on our site. And then like, as we started, how everyone just kind of gathers around and stops there and crosses their arms and grabs their beer and watches you back in. Right. So you also don't want to be the people who are like moving back and forth.
People are always up for a good spectacle of a back end to see if a marriage is going to make it through the next 10 minutes or so. But like the boring part of RV lifestyle, let's be honest. What time of the day are you checking in? Are you pulling in at 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night after a long day when you're really tired and it's a little bit dark and it's hard to see? Or are you pulling in when the campground just emptied out, check-ins have just opened and there's lots to move around? All of those boring little things that people like me think about and want to and say, hey, we got to wrap up this rest stop sooner because Dad wants to get there at a particular time. Those are things that all play into it, but that doesn't stop you from going to your favorite provincial park, state park, or anywhere else for that matter. So I wouldn't say that this is a reason to look at your husband or wife in the car right now and say we're never going there.
Yeah, and I would say if you want a really good visual representation, because we don't have any video and we tend not to video our back ends, but one of our American creator friends, if anybody is aware of the Shin Paws, they have a Class A, very large Class A bus, and they have a video from Halloween where they went to Fort Wilderness, and you can actually see a visual representation of them having to get out and move some things and scraping a tree and having some really tight corners. So if you want to see what that looks like, you can have a look, but you can also see in that video, like there is a lot of room, there's a lot of maneuverability. I just mentioned that as like people love to put up blowables there, so it can get in the way.
And we have a 29-foot trailer. Nobody ever, well, I'm sure it's on there, so somebody will get in the comments and say I'm wrong, but I have yet to see anybody post a review about I couldn't get my 23-foot, my 20-foot trailer into my campsite. It's like had trouble with my 29, my 32, my 42, my 45-foot long thing. Those are, even I don't have some of those problems.
Yes. Okay, so I think we've beaten that subject to death, but something to be aware of. So is Fort Wilderness worth the price? Okay, so I think the value of staying at Fort Wilderness, and some of you may have been listening to the prices per night earlier and going, oh my gosh, that's insane. I would never pay that. But I think it's individual preference. I think it's what you value for included amenities. I think you do get a really unique blend of camping and Disney experiences amenities, really good amenities, activities. The facilities are always darn clean. Like, I mean, you just have that Disney standard of like customer or guest experience that I think is really important. Yes, the prices are higher other than or compared to other campgrounds in the area. You have some additional fees for some amenities. You have policy changes that may or may not affect your overall experience depending on, how you feel about them. But I would say, especially even if you're doing like one park day, I think it's super worth it. One, because you get the benefit of booking some lightning lanes. Two, because, and I'll overlay this on like a hotel experience. We talked extensively. We have traveled with people to Disney World and they stay off site because they're like, oh, well, it's cheaper. I can stay for, $50 cheaper a night off site. So we're going to do that. Usually they have kids. Usually their kids are young. So I would say, and it's the same thing with the campground. It's like, let's use Magic Kingdom as an example. Usually the fireworks are 8, 9 o'clock at night. The park is still kind of closing down after that. It's still usually open for another hour after the fireworks. People are flooding out of that park once that fireworks show is over. If you have tired kids, you have kids that, just really need to get to bed. If you are staying at a property off-site, and let's say you're staying at a campground in the area. So what you're doing then is you're flooding out. You're waiting for a ferry, which you may or may not get on. And if you miss it, you have to wait for the next one. That ferry is going to truck you over to the Ticket and Transportation Center, where you're going to get on a tram and you're going to go through. And depending on where you are parked in that parking lot, that tram has to drop you off at your car. Then you have to join the loads of people who are driving out of the park at night, kind of get on the road, get back to your campground. So you are easily adding another hour to an hour and a half commute after you have already done a full day and everybody is done. Whereas if you are staying at the campground and Magic Kingdom fireworks are finished, you walk out the gate, you get in line for a boat, which yes, you may have to wait for a boat if you miss that, but you get on one boat in 10 minutes. It drops you off at the dock at the campground. You hop in your golf cart, you go back to your site, you're in bed.
Is one of the quicker commutes to Magic Kingdom. I'll give a real life example to articulate this. You're fully serviced by the Disney transportation system with buses to the other parks and Disney Springs and what have you. Pretty common in our family that somebody, usually me and Isla, need to come back for a bit of a break in the middle of the day and have a nap or cool down, or maybe we're just done. We've had enough of the park. We're ready to go back. Melina and Fiona will party till they're the last two people out of the gate, and so that's really convenient because we can all get the vacation that we want because we're really close. And being the guy who nips out of the park and goes for a break, I can tell you that that's one of the shorter commutes to the Magic Kingdom. Mm-hmm. So it's good that way. And now, especially that the kids are into their teenage years, now it's mom and dad going back early and the kids are staying out. Right. But it's really convenient to hit the parks.
For sure. Let's say, for as much as people are tending to say, Disney's losing its magic, they're nickel and diming people, we still think there's some great ways to enjoy a stay at the resort that doesn't cost a dime. So we'll talk about a couple of them. And one of them, actually, they've debuted for 2025, which we just took advantage of, 2 days ago. And I think it is really worth it. But first, okay, so the Chippendale Campfire Sing-Along, I talked about that earlier. You get an evening of songs, you get marshmallow roasting. It's great for small kids and you're around a big bonfire. And it also concludes with like a Disney movie under the stars. So Disney does this thing at all of their resort properties while the weather is good, and they'll set up a big screen and give you blankets and you sit on the ground. Or you can even bring your camp chairs from your site at the campground, I guess, and you watch a Disney movie under the stars. You can view the fireworks from Magic Kingdom at the docks at the marina, and they actually pipe in the music that they play in the Magic Kingdom on the dock. So you can stand along the dock at the campground and watch the fireworks, which I think is a really enjoyable way. Dan much prefers it. He does not like the crowds. He does not like doing fireworks at the castle. So although you don't see the projections that are on the castle, you see the fireworks and you have all of the music and everything. And it's kind of a really special thing just to have all of these families and they've got their hot chocolates and they're standing on the beach or on the dock watching the fireworks.
If you're not into crowds in downtown, pardon me, I'm dating myself with downtown Disney, Main Street, USA, in the park, shoulder to shoulder, and then have to fight your way through the crowds to get on the bus or the boat to get back, you have just as much fun. I have just as much fun. I know that Melina's more hardcore Disney than I am, but we both have an enjoyable experience.
Yeah. Okay, so the electrical water pageant, this is something that's been going on forever. It's super hokey, it's cute, it's got like the best music you've ever seen. They have this electrical water pageant, which is just a bunch of like barges with lights on them that float around Bay Lake, including in front of the campground. And it's just an illuminated bit of nostalgia. I love it so much, so keep your eye out for that. So Tri-Circle D Ranch, there is a ranch right at the campground, and they house the horses that actually pull the buggies up and down Magic Kingdom and use them in the parades. That's where they live. So you can actually go and visit the stables and see and pet some of those horses, learn about the care of the animals. You can also book trail rides, though those ones come at $65 a person, which actually, given what we paid to go trail riding in Banff, in the summer back in 2021, $65 is pretty, even with the exchange rate, is about what we paid to take everyone trail riding in Banff. So, that is a little bit of an add-on, but just going to visit the horses is free of charge. So there is nature trails. You can do wildlife spotting. You can hike, you can bike. There's deer, there's rabbits, there's, all manner of birds there. We've seen a lot of deer, and they're quite small. Like, they're actually pretty tiny. It's kind of neat to see compared to what we would expect in Canada. So there's a lot of scavenger hunts, outdoor games. Disney will usually have boards at the buildings, at the pools, that let you know what's going on, what kind of activities you can participate in them. A lot of them are free. Some of them might be paid. Like, I think, there's been like tie-dye t-shirt things, so you might have to pay a fee if you want a tie-dye t-shirt just for the cost of the shirt or whatever. But it's just a fun way to kind of just engage, explore the grounds, and, do something as a family, which is good. Older kids, you can even let them go off and do, a scavenger hunt by themselves, and it's a relatively secure, safe environment for them to do that. Resort transportation, I consider a free activity. Dan and I just went there after going to the Florida RV Super Show. So yesterday we were riding the Skyliner at Disney just because we had some time to kill and we didn't want to spend any money. So you have boats, you have monorails, you have the Skyliner. I'll give you an example of things that can turn into lifelong memories just because you've rode free transportation. And that's when we went there to Fort Wilderness for Isla's birthday a couple of years ago, or I guess a number of years ago now. She was 11 and Fiona wasn't feeling well. So Dan and Fiona stayed back at the campground, and Isla and we took the boat to Magic Kingdom, and then we took the monorail to the Polynesian because Isla wanted a Dole Whip, pineapple Dole Whip, which they sell at the Polynesian. So we went after dinner. She had her little Mickey ears on. We got our pineapple Dole Whip. And then we decided, well, instead of taking the monorail back to Magic Kingdom, let's take the boat. The timing of this was incredible. We got on this tiny little ferry boat that takes you over to the Magic Kingdom. We had to stop in the middle of the lake and wait because they pause all boat traffic during the fireworks. We were the only 2 people on the boat, and we got to watch the Magic Kingdom fireworks from the middle of the lake, just us and the captain of the boat. And it was like the coolest experience. I still think about it. I know she still remembers it. So little things like that happen when you just, are out and about riding around. So I think that's something that's pretty incredible. And okay, so something I'm really excited about, and this one is actually worth a lot of money. So the final thing I'll talk about is in 2025, if you are considering to go, the day you check into your resort, and there's a number of resorts that are included, the Fort Wilderness is one, and most of the resort hotels also, but on the day you check in, you get free entry to either one of the Disney water parks. Sometimes one of them is closed for maintenance. They tend to alternate them. Sometimes they're both open. You don't even have to check in to the campsite. You can roll up to Blizzard Beach or Typhoon Lagoon, and the parking lots are huge. And there was an RV in the parking lot of Blizzard Beach this time when we went. So you can just park at the back of the parking lot if you haven't checked in yet. And all you have to do is go straight to the gate. And you don't even have to check in. They let you in. They confirm your reservation. For us, we had our magic bands that we have had from previous trips. So if you have those, hang on to them because you can scan it. If you link it with your My Disney experience, they already know you're checking in that day. So we just scanned our band and we got in and we hopped in the lazy river and we had a great time. What's great about that is, if for a family of 4, that's like a $320 US visit. Like it's $79 a person to get in that park into either one of the water parks, right? So that is, to me, a really tangible benefit that's kind of akin to what Disney used to offer years and years ago, just to kind of entice people to come. So I think that's a really great use, especially, if you are beholden by the school schedule like we are, and you're going in July or August when it is like hot, being able to have a free visit to a water park for a day is just unbelievable.
And you know what? You could even think about this another way. You're going to show up, you're going to do the water park. Maybe somebody's going to go back and set up the trailer or the RV, and your older kids are going to stay at the water park until it closes, and they can hop on the bus and go back to the campground and meet you there because it's serviced by bus transportation.
Yeah. Oh, and you know what I didn't mention? Disney Springs. Disney Springs is like the shopping mall Dan called Downtown Disney, which it used to be called years ago. And Disney Springs is somewhere that you can go with your family. It's basically an outdoor shopping mall, right? But there's a Lego store there. There's a huge Disney store there. You can walk around. You can grab lunch. They have their own drone show in the summer that is really cool to see. They have live events. They have a couple of stages where they have performers. So it's a great place that you can just kind of go in a day or an evening, walk around. It doesn't cost you a dime. You just hop on a bus from the campground and they drop you off right at the gate.
Yeah, and you know what? The other thing, maybe as we're bringing this up to a close, like boring RV logistical Disney dad stuff, is like there's a huge overflow parking lot at Fort Wilderness where if you brought your golf cart in on a trailer, you can go drop it, that kind of stuff. Go in, talk to them, let them know what you're trying to do. We do own a Disney timeshare, and one of the selling features when we bought that was they said, listen, you can bring your trailer down and you can use the campground, and then you could go and use an RV resort. So this summer, we actually parked the trailer at Saratoga Springs. We drove the trailer right in the front gate, right up where the bus gets you off, and they said, hey, no problem, go park it between the tennis courts and the river that opens out into Disney Springs. And that was a really nice free feature. So, and it's a great way on a trip, if you've been on the road for a few nights or a week, go and check into a resort for a little bit and do some laundry and rest up and have a shower and then get back in. Like, you don't have to stay in the trailer 100% of your RV trip.
Yeah, and we probably should have started the episode with that. The reason we're talking about Fort Wilderness on this episode is because we did hit it on our way home from Key West, right? So, Fiona and her boyfriend, they had to fly home for work. It was just us and Isla, and you have, a 16-year-old who's bored. They're going to have a long drive home with mom and dad. So it's like, what can we do? Where can we stop to kind of make it fun? So that's why we chose Fort Wilderness. And then we did add that on to the Saratoga Springs so that we could shower. We could have some great air conditioning. We could just kind of, have a bit of a resort experience for her as well. Let us know what you think. Have you been there? Do you plan on going? Share your experiences and tips with us on our social media channels. You can find us on TikTok. You can find us on Instagram at RV Connects. We are on Facebook as The Real RV Connects Podcast. We did have a distinct issue. I fought with Meta for a year. Don't worry about it. If you see an old page, we can't access it, and neither can you. So we are The Real RV Connects podcast on Facebook, and you can always send us an email at hello@rvconnects.com. We always love to hear from you. So thanks so much for tuning in to this episode. Next episode, we have a pretty exciting episode. As we mentioned, Dan and I just came back from Tampa, Florida. We went down to the Tampa RV Super Show. So we're going to have some thoughts on RV shows in general, some of the reasons you might want to attend as we prepare and get ready for the Toronto Spring RV Show at the end of February. And we will have a very special announcement about that show as well.
Yeah, I think, this past weekend we learned a lot about RVing and we learned a lot about ourselves, and we were excited to share that.
Yes, definitely. So thanks so much for tuning in, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.